Hello, my good friends, my dear audiences. Welcome to the show, Jack Chow on East West with G&E TV. For the past few days, to be more precise, for the past 4 days, the whole media world, including every people you come across, they first ask you about NBA. They first ask you about Donald Sterling. So, what had happened? What is the basic story? How big is the problem? Is it the end of it? Or there should be other consequences? We never know. We don't know yet, of course, now. To get to the root, though, we always ask for professionals to get the professional opinions, right? So, once again, joining me is my good friend, Mr. Paul Cheng, a powerful attorney at law of Pasadena. As a matter of fact, he had formerly been a city attorney. So, in other words, you've been standing on this side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle, every
That's a good way to
side
put it.
already. Way to go, right? Okay. So, welcome, Paul, to my show.
Hello.
All right, good. Like I said in the prep, that for the news itself, of course, whatever you know, I know already. Right? Whatever we know, our audience know already. So, let's forget the news part. We're talking about the legality of the whole thing. So, before we touch that point, though, can you give us, my audiences, of course, a overall picture about what had happened, what had been wrong in the first place, and the consequences, please?
Well, essentially what's occurred is that Donald Sterling has given statements that were made confidentially, presumably in the privacy of his own home or in his own office, to, we don't know whether it's his girlfriend. Some people said it's his mistress. She's claiming that she's merely an employee, and that these confidential statements were presented to a third-party source, which in this case was TMZ as well as other sources.
Yeah.
And it was leaked out. Yeah. And now the consequences are that he's been told that he is barred from entering into any NBA activities whatsoever, although he still remains owner. And during the summer, the commissioner has requested that the NBA owners, he needs 3/4 approval to boot him out and essentially force sell the team. And that's the summary of what's occurred.
All right, very good. To get to the point, though, I'm trying to touch base with the problem. All the news you read across and all the news you heard, you see across, you don't see an exact quote of what he said, or you don't see as much. So, is it because the statement is too graphic or too explicit to quote, or is it people try to avoid touching it?
Well, I think there's some caution, right? I mean, it's very rare that someone that's a public figure makes statements to that extent. And they said it's over an hour. Some people said it's, over 10 hours. To this day, we really aren't going to know. We may never know. And it's very rare that someone that's a public figure has made such graphic, not just politically incorrect, but truly hateful statements to people that are really, to people in society, and also to people we care about. I mean, he's made statements about Magic Johnson. He's as much a part of LA as anybody else. And so I think that the news media, as much as they've been going after him, they've also been very cautious to understand that there are a lot of rules and regulations involved, and they definitely don't want to be on the other end, which is a defendant in a lawsuit, particularly because we do know that Donald Sterling, he does sue people. He is very litigious, and he doesn't mind getting sued.
Yeah, he is a acquaintance of our courtrooms. That is for sure. But to be fair, though, to be fair to everybody, even including Donald Sterling, do we have to do something like, say, if sometimes I accuse somebody of doing something wrong to me, I said he F me, or use the A word or F word or B word, something like that. At least we do something, we do bring something as the evidence on the table for the audiences to know. Now people seem to be just assuming that he said something very wrong. How wrong? We never know. There's no evidence to talk about at this very moment. My question was, is it too graphic?
Well, I think you're making suggestions as it relates to defamation, which is slightly different than what occurred, but I think you make a very good point, is if I'm making a statement about somebody else, and I'm basically saying that this person has harmed me or done things to me, is it legal for me to do so?
Yeah.
And the area of defamation, although is not complicated, revolves, in my opinion, around one specific issue, if we're going to bring it back over to Donald Sterling, is whether the person is a public figure or a private figure. And in regard to Donald Sterling, it's a borderline situation, actually. If he really is a public figure, then you could be able to make more statements that you believe to be are true, and if they're proven false, then as a public figure, you're required to prove malice. You're required to prove that the person wanted to specifically lie and misstate things to take you down. As a private figure, the standard is much lower.
All right.
So if you're going to go out there and you're going to say, for example, you know, George, you know, this person, George, he is the worst person in the world, and he stole money from me, and you should never borrow money to him. If you're lying about that situation and he sues you, then the standard is much lower.
I see.
You're going to lose.
Okay.
But if George is a public figure, and you know, for example, he's high like Donald Sterling, and you make that statement, then George actually has to show actual malice on my part, and malice is hard to prove.
I see.
So I think your statement is very important. Is we see the dynamic with Donald Sterling. The question is, well, what about if I make a statement about Donald Sterling?
Yeah, of course.
You know, what about if I say he's a horrible person?
What if you're a public figure?
Correct. I mean, you know, let's just say that I'm a public figure and someone makes a statement about me. Essentially, I have to be able to show actual malice on behalf of the person that said it against me, which is never easy.
And you are a public figure in this case, though.
Well, you know, I mean, in the example that I'm given, in the example that we are being given, I would say Donald Sterling is a public figure. The argument is going to be that he has to show actual malice on behalf of people that make statements against him. Now, there are two exceptions for defamation, which I think are important. One relates to an opinion. If a person gives an opinion, that's very different. Donald Sterling is a horrible person. That's a statement, but it's a statement of opinion. If you're saying Donald Sterling goes out and rapes people, right?
That's a fact.
That's a fact. That's not an opinion, right? And so that's something that we always have to consider. And of course, there's always the defense of fact. Meaning, if I say that Donald Sterling has gone out and made statements that are very hateful, that are anti-race, and it makes me not want to go to Clipper games, which would be very unfortunate because I'm a Clipper fan. That's a fact.
That's a fact, yes.
Right? That's a matter of fact, which means that if he has made those statements and he sues me, I could say, well, you made those statements.
All right. Okay.
So those are really two big issues in terms of defamation.
Very good, very good. So thank you very much for those explanations. That's why I call you up here, because every time when things of that nature happens, you don't want just, well, argue or listen or not listen to. You always want to tend to some professionals, such as yourself. To my audience, they tend to me. Right, say, hey, Jack, get something on the air. Let's talk about it. Let's hear about it. Yeah, that is exactly the moment that you want to bring the positive, the right, full information to our audiences. Let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, I'll still ask more questions regarding the legality of the whole issue. All right, so stay with us.